business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the pod.
Welcome to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. Every episode is an invitation, a reminder that business and life isn't just about profit, it's about purpose. It's about showing up with a servant's heart in every deal, every decision, every day. We're going to talk about the word death today. We're going to talk about which is going to happen with everybody, but how can you do that with a servant's heart? How can you talk about that and discuss that with purpose? Today's guest is going to light you up. You're going to be motivated. You're going to be challenged. And most importantly, you'll walk away with tools that inspire action both in your life and the lives of others. And you get to make that impact, which is so cool. But before we dive in, here's your homework today. Are you going to serve yourself today and others? It's hard to serve others if you're not serving yourself with positivity, with affirmations, manifestation, with growth. And then you can share that with others and really make that impact. And it doesn't have to be a big impact. Even a small act of kindness or courage can change the game for anybody. So lean in, take notes, and let's discover how servant leadership in business and life can create ripple effects that last far beyond the bottom line. And a quick shout out to our sponsor, Epic Impact, the only universal, emotionally resonant messaging framework that works anywhere for any audience. This 4-step system transformed how I pitch, how I post, and how I podcast. Engage, persuade, inspire, and close. I use it daily and it works incredibly. Grab your free trial at epicimpact.ai with promo code Steve to start inspiring action today. Thank you, audience and guest. And my guest today is going to be part of that. We hit top 6 in small business marketing a few months ago or last month. It's all because of you. And guess what? We're making an impact with so many people. Let's continue doing that and just changing the world. So let's bring our guest on. Greg, welcome to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate your interest.
Death doula, you call yourself that. I know I've talked to people about that word. Some know it, some don't. What does that really mean?
Well, a death doula is somewhat similar to a birth doula, Steve, and basically it comes down to helping people in that situation. Having started in the funeral business when I was a young man, and then ultimately working as a hospice volunteer and helping settle a number of estates, I use that phrase because I've helped families in a number of ways.
So finance and death are two of the most emotional things in the world. Buy your house, buy a car, it's emotional because the money going up. But death, people don't want to talk about. I'm a big stoic. I live the daily, so we talk about death all the time. I read because it's going to happen. How can you come in and make that emotional, that's distressing for people, less distressing?
Well, I've written a book with a bit of dry humor in it, Steve. I have followed the proven principles of a dragon from Dragon's Den as I created the manuscript for this book. I took his advice and recruited over 25 beta testers to provide me feedback as I created the manuscript. And all of them wanted to help share their experience and their stories about situations that had gone awry. And that I think I've created a pretty solid book that is really gaining traction.
What are people going to learn from the book?
Well, they're going to understand the fundamentals of what will happen if no planning is done. And they'll understand my perspective based on what I have seen and witnessed and heard, having worked for years on the front lines of the death care industry, and then also working as a certified financial planner and seeing the same sort of general reluctance from people in that space too.
Yeah. Financial death is no different than body death. Same as emotions. It could be probably worse sometimes. And we won't get into that because I don't want to get too negative because I don't think death is negative. I think it takes you to another level. But your background and your health issue that you dealt with has really helped you with this. Tell us your background and story about that.
Yes. Are you referring to the health issue specifically,
Brain
Steve?
tumor, yes.
Yes. Well, after a career of stressing to other people about the importance of them having their final affairs in order and speaking with their family about what they want to have happen, 2 months after I published the book to inspire people about these important matters, I myself was diagnosed with a large brain tumor. And initially I thought it was cancerous because my general physician didn't know if it was cancerous or not. I took my publishing coach's advice and reluctantly posted a short video online assuming I was given a death sentence, and it went viral. It's now been viewed over 1.7 million times.
That's powerful. What did you learn from your tumor?
Well, I learned that it is so important for us to have our final affairs in order when also struggling with a major health crisis at the same time. And I distinctly recall writing that section in my book about how difficult it would be if one did not have their final affairs in order, and then being forced to also face with a health issue and scramble to get the final affairs in order at such a difficult time. But I had no idea, Steve, that I had a large tumor growing within my skull.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. The other part of this that I really want to get into as I was looking at your stuff this morning, we've met before, and Greg was just awesome when I first met him. Older people, people aging, we know they're going to die. They're closer to death than not. You know, I say I'm 65, I'm going to live to 150, but people laugh at me, but I think I will. I mean, I know I will. But the 20-year-old death, I just talked to a lady a couple of weeks ago. Her son died by suicide at 14 years old. That's a huge emotional death. How would you help people handle that?
Well, one of the main things that I stress within this book, Steve, is the fact that death can easily happen, as we know, at any age. And I really try to put a positive spin on this whole death positive movement that many of us are now stressing within this sector. But I'm stressing to people that end of life planning helps reduce the stress of aging. It leaves survivors more financially and emotionally resilient. It tends to leave them in a place where they are more likely to get along and less likely to contest final wishes. It naturally results in more meaningful legacies. It often helps charities because of the immense tax planning benefits of planned giving. It always takes immense pressure off the courts from otherwise needing to be involved in unorganized estates. And all these things cumulatively, Steve, help lift the economy. It's a massive win for everyone.
Yeah. I've dealt with the state, so I know exactly what you're saying. It can be horrific, extremely horrific. And having somebody like you that's assisting that, because I'm not going to go change the engine in my car. I don't know how to do it. I get a mechanic. Well, if I want to handle my estate and I have one myself, you know, I'm going to go to you and go, how do I do this? And because you've done it multiple times, plus being third party, you're not emotional about it, right? Talk about that, how you can have the third party perspective.
Yes. Well, having that third party perspective, Steve, is so vitally important because that emotional attachment of not being a family member or a close friend gives me that different type of perspective that can be very, very helpful, especially combined with the experience of both the funeral and the financial planning worlds. This whole space is so emotionally charged for many people, but it is a big benefit, especially when I've also completed the certificate in estate and trust administration through one of the top estate organizations in the world, which is the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners.
When should somebody start working on their estate?
Sooner than later. We don't know what tomorrow brings for any of us, but typically when a young person is starting a family, moving out on their own, at a bare minimum, and I know a lot of people will roll their eyes at this comment, Steve, but I have seen this so many times. I have seen family after family have no idea what the deceased wanted, whether they wanted cremation or burial, or they wanted their body to be recycled or composted, which are a couple of new options now. But regardless of the size of one's bank account, that type of conversation certainly needs to take place. And the sooner the better.
Yeah. So I went through your stuff, your information, your background. Dr. Dorothy Lay sounds like one of your mentors. Correct me if I'm wrong, but talk about her and how she's influenced and you learned from her.
Well, she was actually a neighborhood friend of my parents, and I never heard of this nurse, Dr. Dorothy Lay, but it ended up that she was very well known within the hospice circles and the hospice movement here in Canada many, many years ago, back in the 80s. She has since died, but I distinctly remember uh, conversations with her that ultimately led me to becoming a funeral director.
Wow. Well, that's a mentor.
Yes.
That's powerful. Gosh, help you get a job and look where you're at today, helping others. I love that. Shout out to Dr. Dorothy. Hope she's still around. I love mentors like that. They do it from their heart, not from their pocketbook. It's so cool. The word you use a couple times is legacy. Very important. I talk to entrepreneurs all the time. What is your legacy? Your purpose, and eventually you can be your legacy. How do you incorporate all that the legacy into everything you do?
Well, Steve, I think most of us want to be remembered for making a difference while we were here. And not everyone obviously can afford to have their name put on a hospital wing or on a library or a museum. But we are creating a legacy with our everyday dealings, how we treat other people and those that we love and care about. But another important part of our legacy is planning, having a will, having things organized, making sure that our login credentials are easily found for our spouse or the person that is to basically wrap up our life. And by the way, another important, vitally important point, Steve, is to stress the fact that having a will is the absolute only way that we can dictate who is to wrap up our life.
Yeah, I love that. People forget that. They're like, oh, I got to pay, Greg, this best money I ever spent. Best money because I have peace of mind, and it helps me build my legacy. It's so big. What for? Because I get asked this all the time. Okay, Steve, you're talking about purpose and servant heart with legacy. What is that? Somebody listening, what would you tell them the first step would be to build that?
Well, this will sound like a biased comment, but I would highly recommend my book. That's the specific reason why it took years to put this book together based on my frontline experience in both the funeral and the financial planning industry, which inspires people to lean into these sorts of things while minds are clear and time is plentiful. There's an extensive glossary at the back of the book that explains terms and definitions used in both industries. And I'm getting several people telling me that is really inspiring them to become engaged within their own planning and speak to their family.
Well, that's a great answer. It doesn't matter if it's biased. If it works, it's your book, and that's the answer. I love that. And we'll get the information, audience, at the end here, how to get the book and all that. And maybe you treat him right, he'll give you a signature. Just throwing it out there, just half cheesing. Death positive movement. What the heck is that?
Well, it's really just a trend in our society, Steve, that these types of conversations are becoming less taboo than they used to be. Gail Rubin from New Mexico puts it perfectly. Her common phrase is that talking about sex will not make anyone pregnant, and talking about death will not make anyone dead. And it's a perfect summary of this whole aspect that has been building for years.
So talk. That's an interesting phrase. Talk about sex. So talking is one thing the audience should learn is talk about it.
Yes, exactly. And for years, and even in college, back in the 80s, when I was in mortuary school, I remember the clergyman teaching us in psychology of grief, actually, stressing the fact that we live in a death-denying society. And it's very much the same today. It's a shame that only about half of the adult population in Canada and the US and in many other countries have a valid will.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, especially if I've been told by others, and you probably agree with this, especially when you make some money. When you make money and you've got assets and money, that's the time, because that's here in America. I know probate just destroys your account, and then your legacy you leave is diminished. If you want to leave something for your kids and it's $1 million and they take 750,000, it's a lot of money. It's not leaving the legacy you want, right?
Yes, and the way the world works, Steve, in many of these types of jurisdictions, Canada, the US, a couple of, well, and in many other countries too, is that if we are proactive and we create our own arrangement, our own contract, whether it's in a business or a marriage or pertaining to end of life issues, we have more control. And humans crave control. So that's why it's important to again, lean into these types of matters and know what the jurisdictional rules are for your area and to how you can work them to your advantage.
Yeah, we're coming back around to you don't know everything, and if you make that one mistake, second mistake, third mistake, it could cost you a ton of money for no reason. And that's again the mechanic thing. You're not going to put your own engine in. You're not going to start. I mean, you could. I know there's ads all the time. Hey, for $250, do your own estate and all that. If you got a lot of money, do not do that. I've seen people lose everything doing that. Go to an expert like Greg. You volunteer, which is why I had you on this show. Big reason, because you volunteer, you have a servant's heart, but you volunteer in hospice. One of the toughest places to me to volunteer. I haven't done it, but my goal is to do that. Talk about how you did that, how it impacted you.
Well, the reason that I wanted to volunteer in a hospice, Steve, was because I knew that the need for people to step up and help out in these types of difficult settings is that there are more and more people needing that type of assistance with the aging demographics and the strain on the healthcare system globally pretty well. And their mandate really, really pulled at my heart. The mandate of hospice is that no one should die alone. And every time I hear that, it almost sends shivers up my spine because it is such a highly charged and emotionally sensitive issue on its own. But it's I remember the fellow that I was with and seeing for months before he had died, and we developed a very strong bond, he and I, and it's something that I won't forget for a long time.
I put the cart before the horse. Let's tell the audience what, because not everybody knows what hospice is. What is
Yes.
hospice? What's the definition of that?
Well, hospice is really a home type setting that supports people at the end of life. And the hospice industry wants to elevate awareness with the public about their services, and it truly is unique. But they don't necessarily help people that are really close to death. In many cases, it could be people of all ages who have a much longer time frame. The hospice industry is trying to engage with people earlier as opposed to 6 months before a death, which I think has typically been the timeline. But it's an excellent service. If this brain tumor that I was diagnosed with was cancerous, which it is not, I'm very fortunate.
Amen.
But if I was dying, Steve, I would want to spend my remaining time in a hospice.
And with people. And, you built a relationship for those number of months. Some people go, well, he's dying, but you know what? He's still alive. Sorry, I get fired up about this. You made an impact with somebody while they're still alive. You made those last 2 or 3 months a quality of life. And I'm with you. If I'm in that situation, I want my quality of life to be the best it can be before, the man upstairs takes me away. So when you go to hospice and you volunteer, what was the emotions you had? Did you see him weekly? How often did you see him?
I saw this elderly fellow with cancer once a week for 9 months.
Oh,
Actually, he was hospitalized and he was told he would have a very short time to live, I think a couple of months, and then he got better. And we jokingly said that he survived hospice, and then he went home, and then I saw him at home for a number of months, and then he ultimately died. But I also helped him create his memoir. Being an author and enjoying writing, I would take my iPad and he would tell me what he wanted and I would type it out. And he found that very helpful from what he and his wife had told me. But the emotions it warmed my heart to really be a part of this, Steve. But many of the experiences kind of reminded me of when I had worked in various funeral homes because it did have a bit of a parallel to some of the funeral homes that I had worked in, which again for me were positive.
a couple of things in that, and thank you for sharing that story. I will share that with others because it's a beautiful message. And the one thing is, what a legacy you built. If, Greg, you didn't do anything else and you're going to do so much, you got so much to do. What a legacy. He worked with a guy for 9 months, actually got him out of hospice because you built that relationship. You served him. You wrote that memoir. Audience, this is powerful. For me and Greg, it'd be simple to sit down. Yeah, there's emotions there, but that's a great way to build a legacy. Oh my gosh, we're coming to the end here. That's a great story. I'm going to shut up now because I'm so excited because you shared that. Now, the other thing with death, I love doing this, and it sounds like you do as well, bringing humor into the situation. How's that help?
Well, it helps relieve the tension. And one of the things when I think of humor in regards to when I worked as a funeral director, and I'm still a funeral director today, Steve, but I don't work in that industry anymore. But I distinctly recall years and years ago going out with my coworker in a smaller city and picking up an elderly woman who died standing up.
Wow. How the heck does that happen?
She had arthritis, and the coroner explained to us as we were there transferring her onto a stretcher to take her back to the funeral home that basically she had arthritis and her knees locked. She was in the kitchen and she just happened to be in the corner of the room and she just kind of, I don't know if her heart gave out or what happened. This was long ago, but her head was just tipped over and sure enough, she was standing up. But I only saw that once.
Wow. Okay, you're throwing stories at me like crazy here. I'm loving it. Well, love's the wrong word. I love loving people, but that's an incredible story. The body is, well, you've probably seen a whole bunch. The body does crazy things, doesn't
Well, it does, yes. And I could tell stories that would curl your hair, Steve, but I won't get
it?
into that.
No, my hair's curly enough, so you're right. I don't need it curlier for sure. Last question before I get into knowing you a little bit more. What does Greg's future look like?
Well, I'm really working hard to help elevate this message. That explanation that I gave you earlier during this interview about greater resilience and setting up survivors to get along and helping the economy and charitable efforts and all those sorts of things, Steve, I've been sharing with so many people on LinkedIn. And many people are engaging with this. And once they learn about what I've gone through with a brain tumor, a lot of them are telling me that this message is very compelling and it needs to be shared. But I recently surpassed 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, which I'm told is quite a threshold to hit.
Yeah, it's powerful. Your message is getting out there. Well, let's end. This is a subject that's a little difficult. It's inevitable to me, but for some people it's difficult. But let's come up with a fun question. Now, I want to get to know you a little bit more. So I've reserved a table at a restaurant for you. You'll get one of the chairs. You have 3 empty chairs. Who is Greg going to invite, whether dead or alive, to converse with, get to know more, and what food is he ordering for the table?
I wasn't expecting these questions.
No,
So I've got 3 chairs to fill, Steve.
3 chairs.
3 chairs. All right. I would invite, this is just off the top of my head, I would invite Barack Obama. I would invite perhaps the Prime Minister, Mark Carney of Canada, and I would invite Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh, what a diverse crowd. That's fantastic.
And I would order I would order lobster.
Oh, okay. Might have to bring a 5th chair in. Might have to sneak my butt in there a little bit. That's a great table. Thank you for sharing that. Greg, we're blessed to have you on today. Truly, from my heart, you're doing yeoman's work. You're doing God's work in my eyes. You're helping people where they really need help the most. I think mental health and death are 2 things that people are scared of these days, and they should be, but we can learn from you. I know people listening want to get the book. How can they get the book, and how can they find you?
The best way to find the book, it's really available everywhere, Steve, but going to my website, do not ignore your mortality.com, takes people to all the links on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Apple. It's available in ebook and audiobook. But I also want to stress that I've created 2 curated resources that will really help listeners understand this better and have these conversations in a more meaningful way with those they love. I've created a quiz, a short quiz, which will take anyone about 2 minutes. It's called the Living Legacy Quiz, and it's available in the resources section of my website. And it'll prove to most people that they have some planning to do. I have found the vast majority of people, Steve, are not very prepared for end-of-life issues. But I've also created a curated list of questions that they can use, print off free of charge from my website. The probing legacy questions are available free to anyone as well from my site.
Fantastic guest, because he's still serving at the end, giving away free stuff and helping people. An audience, reach out to him, because that's going to happen. we can't avoid it. Death, taxes, and I don't forget the other thing they talk about, guaranteed 100%. Thanks again, Greg. You're just wonderful. Appreciate your time. And audience, subscribe to the YouTube channel, but not the why you may think, because here's a perfect example. You subscribe, you get Greg's link, his podcast. Well, you're talking to somebody who's at end of life or is going through some traumatic health issues. This is a person you want them to listen to. And maybe reach out to Greg and you've impacted them. What did I start the show with? Making an impact. Well, Greg can do that for all of us because we're going to get to end of life sooner or later. Reach out and do that. Do the and any other podcast. It just doesn't have to be mine. If something resonates with you, I do it all the time. I've got a couple of people to share this podcast with as well. With that being said, me and Greg want to thank everybody for watching or listening to this podcast, and we'll see you all in the next episode of Doing Business with the Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.